Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Sean and Sophia Show, working title still. And I'm really excited today to be joined, of course, by the lovely Sophia Traeger. And we're really excited to be here with you today. We're talking a lot about empaths and healers and their propensity, their tendency towards being pleasers, and how that shows up in their world, and how that impacts them negatively, and how they can move through that and kind of return to baseline more readily and things like that. And so I just kind of want to dive right in. And I'm curious, Sophia, can you tell me a little bit about why, like, how are you seeing this up for you in your world? Why is this present for you?
Yeah. Well, in thinking about you and me, for example, would you consider yourself an empath?
I have, I feel empathic, and something tells me I'm probably more empathic than I realize. I tend to, I think in my life I've stuffed that down through like addictions and food and things like that because I felt too much. So I do things to settle that. So I probably have more of it than usual, than the norm maybe, but I also know some people who seem to be intensely empathic, and so at a higher degree than me. How about you?
Right.
You feel that?
That's what I'm talking about. I have always felt a lot, and I feel very sensitive to energy, and it shows up in my body where if I'm having a conversation with somebody, immediately I'll get a headache, which signals to me I think this conversation needs to be over, or I'll start to feel pain in usually the same places in my body, which is my back. That's to be the loudest for me. I don't believe I am a true empath in the ways that you just described, where I know individuals, especially women that I work with, who they feel so much to the point of where they start to shut down or become extremely depleted because they have no idea of the extent of how much they're an empath. They feel everything. And the analogy that comes to me is psychics who get downloads and messages all the time and they don't know how to turn it off. Or an individual, I used to work with a lot of men and women who suffered from schizophrenia, and they would hear voices and really did not know how to cope with that. They didn't know what to do with that, and it's quite overwhelming. So I imagine that it's like that. And especially healers, I've noticed that it's a blessing and a curse. These women go into these fields, whether it's nursing, acupuncture, being a doctor, whatever healing, especially energy work. It's so interesting that empaths go into energy work or psychic, intuitive work because they truly want to help people. But in the process of that, they, just like a classic pleaser, do not know how to help themselves first, and they're giving, and receiving so much input and stimuli from outside of them that they are breaking down literally. They are becoming very, very sick. And I have clients like that where it comes to a head. And that's when they hire me. They don't know that there's a correlation between being a profound empath and the healing work that they do, and that starts to come up more in their awareness as we peel away the layers as we're working together.
Yeah. Sounds really challenging. And another way I would actually describe this too is, and I imagine it's very similar, is like HSPs, highly sensitive people.
Yes.
And seeing that some of the men I work with definitely fall into that category, because there's a sense of being more available and being more open, which also means, like, especially in early age, a lot more prone to being impacted negatively. And any kind of emotional or psychological abuse is like is received like the tenfold or something,
Yes.
so they end up with all these intense things. And one of the things I've noticed a lot with the men that I work with is this tendency to not avoid confrontation because they have so much intensity that they'll just try to scoot around things. And I'm guilty of this too in my life, having scooted around things instead of just showing up and saying like, this is my boundary, this is my spot. And I imagine that is that same energy where it's like, I want to just get around the problem is also the same energy that also puts people in that pleaser role. Is that how you would see it as well?
Absolutely. That the pleaser behaviors start to develop as a result of not knowing how to put up boundaries, not knowing how to work with their own energy and the energy of other people around them. And what ends up happening is a lot of internalized hatred and blaming of self, and believing that the women that I work with believe that they are broken, that something is wrong with them because they feel so much. Why can't, they often ask, why can't I feel less? Or I'm an introvert, or I'm a hermit, I'm a loner, I'm not cut out. It's so sad because they believe they're not cut out for relationships. The reality is that they've been choosing the wrong people to be in relationship with and the wrong people to surround themselves with. And a lot of times they'll say, my picker is broken. And that's the truth. It's not that they're broken. It's that they are so loving, so compassionate, so willing to help, so willing to make people feel better, that they're not realizing that that is at a cost of themselves. And they don't, there's so many layers to it. They don't believe that they deserve to put themselves first because they have been deemed broken by their parents, their families, by schools. So it's deeply, deeply ingrained, these beliefs that become internalized as the inner critic and end up becoming protective mechanisms, which is the shutting away, becoming an ice queen, becoming a bitch, becoming really mean to push people away because it hurts so much to have so much input coming in.
Yeah, I'm really impacted in listening to you and thinking about the men in this situation and noticing how I maybe perceive it showing up a little differently with men or what I've seen in my life and the men around me. And it's we can still be friendly, but there's this sense of just keeping everybody at just an arm's length. And I know that I'm seriously guilty of this. Is just keeping everybody back just a bit, because there's something in me that says it's unsafe. And especially at times in my life when I didn't have my barriers or my kind of energetic armory. And armory is a little harsh of a word. I think of it more like a force field. It's very malleable and it's very permeable when I choose and when the good things need to come through, things like that. So it's I don't want to armor myself and keep people at a distance, but there's a process to that learning. So I think what happens a lot is we'll be empaths in our younger years and it'll just be we don't know what to do with it. And then all of a sudden we start to realize on some level that this is hurting us. And so we just wall up the whole world, and shut everything out. But then at some point, those same empaths are also fed by connection. There's something that feeds them deep down, something that feeds me deep down. It's so it's literally becomes the thing I want the most, excuse me, is the thing that could potentially hurt me the most,
Yes, that's exactly right. You totally nailed it. There's a woman one of my clients who I'm going to be interviewing really soon, she wants, everyone wants connection. She wants to connect profoundly, but it's been so painful that she didn't know what to do with that. And so she and our work together has been creating these energetic fields that she chooses who and how much energy is going to come in and how much energy is going to come out. The flip side of isolation and becoming a hermit is excess.
Mm-hmm.
So I notice in women, because they're so hungry for connection, and they starve themselves, because when you're going into isolation, you're depriving yourself. And anytime you deprive yourself of anything, eventually the craving becomes so intense that you're just going to start picking whatever is in front of you. So there is a surge of promiscuity. Especially because they're empaths, they feel so much. And of course, sexuality is heightened and sensuality is heightened, which is beautiful. But again, there needs to be boundaries around that. So promiscuity starts to happen, or drug use starts to happen. The excesses, because the feeling great is also something that they want, but they don't know how to moderate it. They're going to extremes. Either it's too much and they dive right into situations because it feels so amazing, or they completely isolate themselves because it's too painful.
Jeez. Yeah. I resonate with this more than I realized I was going to.
It's the hunger, Sean. This is something that I've truly has come into my own awareness in my own life, in my own cycle of patterns of like, oh, and now I'm going to be celibate for a long time. And look at me, I'm such a great meditator. And then I'm like, whoa, I'm so hungry. And, oh, well, here's a guy in front of me, and here's this in front of me, and here's this food, and here's this opportunity. And those opportunities are not always the thing that's going to feed me. It's just going to satiate something in the moment. And this is a huge awareness that I've had recently. I'm seeing this in the women that I work with and the women in my life as well, is this profound hunger as a result of starving ourselves of creativity, starving ourselves of touch, huge, starving ourselves of all of the different intimacies, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, all of that. And then we get to this point of like, I just need something right now. It's like going on a creative diet. I need something right now. And then it's usually not the best choice.
Yeah. How much would you say, because I hear that it can be that it's like, okay, I starved myself and now I'm just like so hungry that I'm just going to devour. And then there's this other side to it that's like, I am, I think from my experience, it was I subconsciously am trying to feel less. Like when I was a child and my parents would fight and I would just be so attuned to it that I would eat food, or like do anything that would just like take my attention off the experience that I was having emotionally. Yes. And so I'm wondering, like, where is the dividing line for that? And how does a person know whether or not they're starving and now they're coming with that hunger, or are they like trying to avoid feeling because they feel so much?
I honestly believe it's two sides of the same coin. Because the result is the same. They're at the end of the episode of binging on whatever it is, drugs, sex, food, opportunities, the giving, like workaholic, whatever it is, the result is the same. There's depletion, there's sickness, there's self-hatred, self-betrayal. And I mean, it's like it's traumas that build upon each other. So whatever the reason is, or it comes back to the intention. So whether you're trying to numb or I think when you're going into excess, it's the same thing as numbing, because it's like getting high on heroin, right? You're trying not to feel what's happening in the moment. A case study, same client that I'm thinking of, she I just lost my train of thought.
Well, that's quite all right.
What were we talking about? The intensity of emotion, not feeling. Oh, yes. So the same client, she is very wise, very spiritual, very aware. And she and I got to go into more subtle expressions of being a pleaser. What I noticed with her and what I kept calling her out on is you don't have to change or do anything when you're feeling something. You feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You allow yourself to feel it in the moment, even if it's extremely intense.
Yeah.
That you hold that part of you just like you want it to be held as a kid, just like you want men to hold you. You yourself, your own masculine, needs to hold that intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Not expecting others to do it outside of you. You have to hold that intensity. Not trying to do something different, not trying to do something spiritual, the spiritual bypassing of like, well, now I'm going to meditate, or now I'm going to say some affirmations and make it go away.
Right.
I kept telling her, I kept showing her, no, what if you just try to experience it and have a conversation with it?
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to move it, not reacting to the sensation of, ooh, I really want to have sex with this person. I really want to feel connected to this person.
Mm-hmm.
Just stepping back and observing that and seeing what really is happening. Mm-hmm. What is truly the craving and the desire? Is it a craving, or is it coming from a place of mutual love and connection?
Yeah.
It's the not reacting that's a really big part of creating that energetic field. Does that resonate?
Yeah, I think like what comes up is the thought of like what is stress and what causes the most discomfort or dis-ease in the body is like our resistance to what is and our avoidance of what is and like pushing it away and just not, it's like we spend more energy avoiding the thing than the thing, whatever the thing is, might actually take from us. Because we're just like, people spend years avoiding like a trauma because it looks so dark and intense. And then the moment they decide, okay, I'm going to do this, like 80% of the thing goes away. And they're like, oh, I was kind of describing this to a client the other day. It was like, oh, I feel like I'm holding the world on my shoulders. And then the moment I'm like actually willing to take it and put it in front of me, suddenly like shrinks into my hand. And I'm like, oh, I can actually like work with this thing. And one of the things I kind of like moving towards how we approach all of this and like how do we overcome this sense of being pleaser in this movement. And one of the things that I've been sharing with my men is like moving through the archetypes in the masculine and moving into a warrior energy. Typically with like empaths or highly sensitive people, they're really good at like lover and probably magician. But moving into that warrior energy is not usually that comfortable for empathic people. And yet for like the men that I work with, there's something really powerful about showing up grounded and solid and clear and expressing boundaries and then holding them and doing all of this in like the masculine form of love. Like when we think of love, I think we all think of the feminine, compassionate, loving, and kind of cuddly kind of love. But there's also this other type of love, and it's like there's like another quality to it, and it's this masculine energy where it's like I'm going to show up and hold you accountable in a loving way, and I'm going to show up and hold myself accountable in a loving way. And something that I think happens when we really start to embody this sense of grounded presence as a man, that we actually show up and create a safer container for our beloveds, and we can actually not roll over and just be pleasers for them because and not have any resentment build in ourselves, and actually create a safer environment for ourselves, for our beloved, and for the relationship to thrive in a better way.
Well, bless you for doing this work with me. Thank you. Let's all thank Sean and his clients
Yes, thank the men who are showing up to
Yes.
do the work.
In addition to that, I am encouraging and working and playing with women so that they recognize that part in themselves.
Mm.
Not to become self-reliant, feminist, independent, I don't need a man type, but more as cutting the cord from seeking outside validation, for seeking the masculine for seeking the masculine outside of them. This is something huge that has come up in my work with clients, is modeling to them both the receptive feminine and the strong, powerful, directive,
penetrative
boundary masculine.
Yeah.
Because I know in my life, I did not have boundaries. I didn't even know what that was. And now that I do, it's very painful when they're violated.
Mm.
It's much easier not to have boundaries and just to let people permeate you all the time. But now that I have boundaries and my clients are developing boundaries as a result of working with me, it's very painful when it's violated. And the anger starts to come out, anger that women have not allowed themselves to feel ever. And if they felt it, it was quite internalized, which translates as depression and anxiety or being destructive.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of this is coming out. It's like, whoa, I have boundaries. Whoa, you're violating them. Whoa, I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to brush up on my, feminine archetypes, but is there like a warrior kind of archetype for women?
I'm not actually sure, but I would imagine there's like the counterpart.
I know there's the mother and the protector, whatever,
Yeah.
the queen, the goddess, all that stuff. I need to take a look at that. But I'm advising my clients to hold themselves, create the container for themselves, and allow themselves to feel everything and practice radical self-acceptance before they can put their energy out into the world in a beautiful, loving, intentional way that's in service. In fact, I would love for you and I to talk about the difference between being in service and being a pleaser at some point. That's a topic that I jotted down because it's an extremely important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with my women, they need to find that within themselves, not to cut themselves off. On the contrary, to then be more available to receive with people in their life, to be more available in loving relationships, to have very clear boundaries and recognizing red flags right away with people, men, intimate relationships, when they are being violated. And saying very quickly that you stepped over a boundary. We need to talk about that. Mm-hmm. And to be okay with letting people go when they're continually violating boundaries.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. It's like one of the first steps, one of the things that I've noticed in my own journey and the journey of many men, it's like we don't even know about boundaries until they're crossed. And then it's like, oh, that was my boundary. It's like, we're not really taught how to do that. So all of a sudden,
I don't even think people know that their boundaries are being crossed.
Well, I think
there's just a feeling that they have, but they're not even connected to their body enough to know.
Well, I'm saying in the first steps of learning about boundaries, that's how we know where they are. Because you're absolutely right. It's just like, oh, I don't like this. Something I am all of a sudden very pissed off, and I actually don't know why. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, when you look back, it's like, oh, because there's this boundary that was crossed, right? But what becomes really important, I think, and one of the things within the warrior archetype that I'm really appreciating is this sense of when you learn about those boundaries, stating them early. Like don't wait until somebody's crossing them to lay out your boundary. It's like, this is my boundary. Like, we're walking into this type of container. And one way to really practice this that I like to share is like time blocks. It's like when you're on the phone with somebody, just be like, hey, I have to get off the phone at 10:20, like that's my time block. And then just hold it, and it's just a practice of you working with that idea of like stating my boundary and then inviting that person to honor that boundary and getting off the phone at that time, and it just gets you used to that kind of process. And so it becomes really important to just like learn about them, state them, and then hold them cleanly. And that allows you to be so much more available within the confines of that boundary versus like, I don't know where my boundaries are, so I'm not fully open at any point because I'm afraid we're going to cross a boundary because I don't know where they are, So there's like this real strong need to learn, like you said, like connecting to yourself and being really present to your own needs and taking good care of yourself so that you can share that with another person, so that you can create true intimacy by fully showing up in you while they fully show up in them, and then you'll meet.
Yes, you nailed it. Totally. Two things come up. One is definitely getting into the practice and not being afraid, showing up courageously when meeting somebody that you're attracted to, that you're interested in, and letting them know right away. And it's scary, right? Because you don't want to expose the ugly parts. So, but I see so much wisdom in that. And I've talked to so many people who are in amazing relationships, and they've said the same thing, where it's like a warning. It's like, beware. It's like letting people know, I know that the next intimate relationship that I'm going to be in, I'm going to let them know there's a part of me that I am very aware of. It's wounded. However, I mean, I have a handle on it, but she might come out. Not might, she'll come out. She'll come out. Right? And she's the one who doesn't like to not be heard. And so I'm asking for, it's an opportunity to to make a request with a need. I'm asking for you to be compassionate and loving when that part of me comes out. Not to perpetuate it by not hearing me.
Yeah.
Right? And I've never done that before, and I'm excited. It's powerful to let people know, like, for an empath to speak to that part of themselves, that's such a gift to say, I feel so much. So when I'm asking you for space, you need to give it to me immediately. That's a boundary. Like, it needs to happen. Don't take it personally. It just is. It's so powerful to have that kind of conversation, to let people know what it is that we need, and to observe how respectful are people going to be of that, because it's not negotiable. And there was another part, but I don't remember.
No, that's really solid. And I feel a desire to recap, because this is like amazing pearls that you're giving here. And it's just like this sense of really being connected to yourself and knowing those parts of yourself and even naming them. Me and my beloved, we actually name parts of ourselves, like I have part of me that's like a jerk that comes out when I'm super triggered or whatever. And we try not to let our jerks come out, but it's like this sense of knowing yourself, naming the parts of you, and then sharing that. It's like the more we know about ourselves, the more we're available to share with another, and we can actually speak to what our boundaries are and what our needs are. And then we can show up more fully in our lives, and we can take better care of ourselves. And these are amazing things for folks that find themselves in that empathic space or that highly sensitive space, and how they can move through relationship in a good way. And I feel really grateful for you sharing all of this that you've learned over your own life and through working with your clients, because this stuff is really, really valuable to a lot of people. And this is the kind of thing that I think goes under the radar too. This is the kind of thing that it can be like avoided for a whole life, but when we actually turn and engage it, it can actually be game changing in terms of how we show up, how fulfilling our lives and relationships are. So I really, really appreciate you sharing this with everyone today. And
I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, if we have another one.
I'm like,
got another pearl.
I'm like, I need to say it now. Okay. What I was going to say, and I think it's going along with what you're saying right now, is our own individual responsibility. That it is not up to the people in our lives to know us, read our minds, take care of us, things like that. And it's our own individual responsibility to awaken, to become aware of our triggers, our wounding, our boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, like, I'm done with the passive aggressiveness in myself and other people. Like, the experience of, I've had this happen so many times with men who were not aware of their boundaries, where they would feel something, they would feel angry, and it would go on and on and on for weeks. And then all of a sudden they're treating me like shit. And I'm like, what happened there? What's going on? And I felt like I was the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not sexy when you're constantly the teacher in a relationship. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was like, hey, if you're mad, you need to tell me in the moment. Or if you're feeling something that's off, you need to tell me in the moment. And time again, they would say, I didn't know I was feeling that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't know that was my boundary. And I'm left feeling really frustrated, and this like compulsion to go into pleaser mode, because it's like, oh wait, something's going on, let me make sure you're okay. And I'm done with that. And the women I work with, they're done with that. It's like, no, you're responsible to know yourself, to know your boundaries, to know what you're feeling in your own body, so that you can tell me, if not in the moment, very soon after, not 8 weeks later when you're projecting your shit onto me.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that was very important to talk about, that anyone who's listening to this, it is your responsibility to awaken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible. It's much harder to try to do it by yourself. That's why Sean and I exist, and so many other amazing mentors, facilitators, coaches, guides, healers, shamans exist in the world, so that we can hold space for you to awaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You become aware of your amazing gifts and your shadow, because you are responsible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
To have a great relationship and
Yeah.
demand that of your partners.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is responsibility. It's personal responsibility. We tend to offset responsibility a lot of times. I know I have in my life. And there's something really powerful about owning that and grounding that into ourselves and showing up in that place, and coming out of your victim and kind of moving into a more sovereign role. And there's something really, really powerful in that. And yeah, just feel really grateful for you sharing all of this today. And I look forward to when my guys and your gals get together, because that's going to be some powerhouse relationships right there.
I know, Sean, we need to do workshops.
Yeah.
We really do. We need to be out
happen.
In person with people, sharing this play with men and women, and having them experience in vivo all of these practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
I see that. It's my vision.
Awesome. Let's hone that one. Well, thank you so much for showing up today and sharing of your wisdom and knowledge. And I'm sure that everybody appreciates it. So on behalf of everybody, thank you. And I'm wondering if you have anything else that you would like to say to close for today?
Absolutely. I am always inviting women into conversation with me. If you are ready and committed to have some serious play in your life and pleasure, then schedule a consultation with me. There's limited slots. I can certainly put you on a waiting list, but I want you to seize the day now and do that.
Mm-hmm.
And all information will be available.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you everyone for showing up today. Similar to Sophia, if for any men out there, I offer a 1-hour breakthrough session, and it's one-on-one, and it's designed to help you get really clear on what you desire and what's stopping you. What's the number one thing from stopping you from getting to what you want, and how can you really take steps right now to create a better experience, to create more connection with yourself and others in your life right away. And so the information will be at the bottom, and we just really appreciate you showing up. We will continue to create these episodes because we feel really jazzed about offering and being of service in this way. And to us, this is what it's all about. It's about just giving and sharing, and we're here for the greater good, and we want to support you in any way we can. So we just invite you to be available to receive that support and make yourself available for that. So we love you, and we wish you a wonderful, wonderful week.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.